I told her, I said, I know my Grandpa Hale would like to have seen that. My Grandpa Hale and his brother, they had singing schools. And on the weekends, when they weren't working on Saturdays and Sundays and so forth, that's what the families do. They'd all get together around the piano, and they'd all get together, and they had quartets, and they'd sing, and they'd do that sort of thing. Now, for some of you youngers, that was way back before television, see. And I think people really enjoyed family back then. And the sad part was, I was thinking about that, and I thought, Alan only lives about a mile from me, and we never get together and do that. And that's a shame. That's really a shame that we don't get together on Sunday afternoons or any time, and we can do that just about any time. Next time at your house, but you bring the chicken next time, Al. But it was really fun. We really enjoyed that. Yes.
I tell a friend of mine this evening, I said, you know, I long for them old days when people used to love one another enough to visit one another.
Yes, that's true. Yes, but I certainly, today has really been a blessing for me, and it's really, I hope it's been a blessing for the rest of my family. And Alan's sister's here from Clovis, Clovis, New Mexico, Geraldine. And we don't get to see her very often. She comes to town once in a while, and we get to see her, but we really don't get to visit with her all that much. But we're really glad you're here. And, of course, Aunt Gladys, we're really glad that she's here, and if she didn't have a steady job at another church, we'd just adopt her. And we've already adopted her, but I mean, we'd drag her off down here is what I'm trying to say. But we're glad to have Geraldine. Now, Geraldine she's a speech writer for the Postal Service, and she goes everywhere, and she writes speeches and goes everywhere and gives these speeches. She's real good at what she does. How many would like to see her write a speech and go everywhere and give it? To see? I wish she had time to do that, but she's really excellent at what she does. And if I can find the 23rd Psalms, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time. I would like to speak to you just a little bit this evening from the 23rd Psalms. And most of us, that's one of the first things that as children that we memorize is the 23rd Psalms. And I was thinking on that, about the 23rd Psalms and the way it starts out. It's a beautiful psalm. And the 23rd Psalm, if you could take the first verse of the 23rd Psalm, and if you could really take it to heart, if you could not only read it, but understand it and get it deep down in your soul and just take both feet and plant right on that first verse and believe every word of it, I'll tell you what, there would be such peace in our lives. But it's hard to, but what's amazing, it's one of the first scriptures that we memorize. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. Honey, what's for supper right after church? Have you got $3 so we go to Hardy? You know, no, really, you know what I'm saying? But we don't really, I'm afraid we really don't, turn on the mic. See? There's a sign right there. The Lord's already trying to get my attention. And he used Jason to get my attention. But one time there was a little girl, and they had a church program, and her part of the program was that she was supposed to quote the 23rd Psalms. And it was her turn, and she got up there, and she said, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And she forgot the rest of it. I mean, she just went blank. She said, and that's enough. And that's true. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. If we could just get that deep down in our soul and realize the Lord is our shepherd. The Lord is our shepherd. You know what? A lot of us run around like we don't have a shepherd, don't we? But aren't you glad as a Christian you have a shepherd? And you see, here's what people don't realize. I don't care if your life is on an even keel. You need a shepherd. Now, there's a lot of people that aren't even saved, and their lives seem to be pretty good shape. I mean, no big calamities or seem like are in their lives, and you would think that they have it all together, but I'll tell you, they still need the shepherd. Now, the reason it's imperative that you have a shepherd is because you don't know what tomorrow brings. But the good shepherd does, and he knows where he's leading you. Now, you don't always know where he's leading you. And keep this in mind, please. It's not the sheep's job to know where they're going. My job is just to follow the good shepherd. That's all he asked me to do. But isn't it amazing how we constantly are questioning His judgment. Well, Lord, why do you do this? Why this? Why that? I don't understand this. You know, we just gripe and grumble, and He knows all the time what He's doing. I got to tickle at my cousin this afternoon. The ladies had the songbooks, and they were trying to sing one of these songs that they sang tonight, and boy, they stopped, and they had a hard place in there, and they was over, and they was just looking at that, and I couldn't hear what they're saying. I was across the room, and I was over there with my cousin, Jimmy, and he started laughing. He said, look at those women over there arguing with the notes on that songbook. He said, there's like a lost man arguing with his compass. You know, oh, no, that can't be north, you know. And that's the way we do the Lord. You know, the Lord's our shepherd, and He's leading me. Oh, no, Lord, you made a terrible mistake now. I'm not supposed to go that way. You know, that's just the way we do. And He knows all the time what He's doing. Do you know why? Because, you see, He sees tomorrow and you don't. And when He leads you, what you might think is a catastrophe might save your life. And I've shared this before, way back when I first started preaching. Way out at Alpine, way up on top of the hill. Now, back then, the roads were a lot worse than they are now, Chubby. Chubby and Sharon live out that way. Dirt roads, and I mean, tell you, just seemed like miles and miles, and about every mile, of course, there was an intersection. Weeds seemed like 15 feet tall, and for some reason I had in my mind, if you was going north or south, you had the right of way. So, boy, every Sunday, I'd be going to church, and I'd just be zipping down through there, just lickety-split. Because I had the right of way. Somebody that was going from east to west or west to east thought they had the right of way. Isn't that dumb? But they did. They thought they did. Now, there was no stop signs, no yield signs or anything. But I remember one Sunday, boy, I was zipping along there, and it's the first time I ever did it. I was driving along there, and just before I got that intersection, something said, you better hit your brake. And I just put my foot on the brake. I didn't stop, but I just slowed down just a little bit. And just about where I would have been if I hadn't hit my brake, there was a pickup come through that intersection about 45, 50 miles an hour. The timing would have been perfect. It would have been it had been on the 10 o'clock news. It would have been a good one. You know, but see, God knows what He's doing. There was a young man in the book of Genesis named Joseph. Oh, I like Joseph's attitude. Joseph was a dreamer and an interpreter of dreams. And he had these brothers. And he would dream dreams, and he would come and tell his brothers, he'd say, you know, I had this dream, let me tell you about it. And he'd tell the dream, and his brothers were very jealous of Joseph because he was so loved by his father, Jacob. And all of the dreams would suggest that the day would come when all of his brothers would bow down before him. And oh, they didn't like him. And so the brothers were way off one time, and they were feeding the flocks, and the father, Jacob, said, Joseph, I want you to take some cheese and some stuff and go see how your brothers are doing. Well, he went way out there. I don't know how many miles it was, but he went to find his brothers, and they saw him a long ways off, and they said, there comes that dreamer. Said, let's kill him and tell Daddy that he died. Well, they were going to kill him and said, well, let's just, one of the brothers said, let's don't kill him. Let's just put him in one of these pits, and he can't get out of it because we don't want to kill him. And they put him in a pit, and they put him in a pit, they saw a caravan coming that was going down into Egypt. And one of them said, well, instead of killing him or leaving him in the pit, let's just sell him as a slave down into Egypt, which they did. They took his robe, they took his coat of many colors, and they covered it with blood and brought it to the father and said, here's what we found. Evidently some wild beast has killed little Joseph. Well, I love little Joseph's attitude because it's so unlike mine. You know, while I was in Egypt, I'd be griping and grumbling. Oh, my goodness. And you would too. Now, come on. There's not very many Josephs. Well, Lord, Lord, I've always served you. Lord, you know I love you. And here I'm way down here away from my daddy and my mama and my friends. And here I've been sold into slavery. And you remember how it just got worse. Joseph was the type of person that whatever he had to do, he did it the best he could. And he wound up as a servant in Potiphar's house. He was a good servant, and he managed Potiphar's house, and he turned a profit for him. In other words, he did a wonderful job. But you remember the story how Potiphar's wife wanted Joseph, and she made a play for Joseph, and Joseph wouldn't respond, and so she lied about Joseph and said, he tried to attack me. And so they took Joseph and threw him into prison. And while he was in prison, why, he was there a long time, and he met a butler and a baker. And you remember, I'm not going to go into all of the story, but anyway, one of them, he interpreted a dream for each of them. One of them was executed, and the other one was restored. The butler, I believe it was, restored to his former position as the cupbearer for the Pharaoh. Well, the Pharaoh had a dream one night that really troubled him, and he dreamed about 7 fat cows, and said first there were 7 fat cows that came up out of the sea, and then there were 7 lean cows that come up out of the sea, and the 7 lean cows ate the 7 fat cows, and he didn't understand that. And another dream was there were 7 good ears of corn, and then there were 7 blighted ears of corn that came up and devoured the 7 good ears of corn. You remember the story, and they couldn't understand it, and he couldn't understand it, and it troubled him. And so he called for the wise men. He said, I want you to interpret my dream. And they said, well, what is your dream? He said, oh no, I'm not going to tell you what it is. He said, because if I tell you, you'll make up an answer. He said, if you've really got the wisdom and the knowledge that you're supposed to have, you'll tell me what I dreamed and then interpret it. Well, they said, there's no man can do that. No man can do that. And the butler said, well, King, there was a young man in prison that could interpret dreams. And they called for Joseph, and Joseph interpreted it, and he said, well, here's what this means. He said, the 7 fat cows mean 7 good years. All the crops are just going to grow. And then right behind that is 7 bad years of famine. And he said the second dream is the same. The 7 good ears of corn and the 7 blighted ears of corn will devour the 7 good years. So Pharaoh said, so he suggested, he said, what you need to do is put someone over your business and harvest all that's brought in the 7 good years, and so that you'll have plenty during the 7 lean years. And so the Pharaoh said, well, who better than you? And so he made Joseph the ruler right under him, his right-hand man, over all of Egypt. Well, when the famine came, and he stored up grain, I mean, there was grain, Egypt just running over with granaries. Well, when the famine hit, why, there was famine in Canaan. Jacob and his family became in want, and his sons were in want. But he says, we've heard there's corn in Egypt. And he told the brothers, said, go down in Egypt and see if you can buy corn. Well, some of the brothers went down there to buy corn. And lo and behold, they came before Pharaoh, but they didn't before Joseph, but they didn't recognize him. And he asked all about him, and he said, do you have any more brothers? And they said, well, we have one. His name's Benjamin. He's the youngest. And his brother was Joseph, and Joseph is no more. They didn't even realize this talking to Joseph. You remember the story, and go ahead and read the story if you want to. It's so interesting. It's one of my favorite Bible stories, how that they started back, and when Joseph had them to take one of them's money sack, and after they'd paid for the grain, and put it right back in the bundle, and as they was on their way, he sent the guards after them, and they said somebody stole the king's, Pharaoh's money after, and so forth and so on. And they searched all their corn, and they found them, and they brought them all back. And so he locked one of them in prison and said, now you can't come back unless you bring Benjamin. If you don't, I'll know you're spies. You're not really telling me the truth. They go back and they eat up all that stuff, and eventually they come back. But as the story goes, and if you remember, the whole family was brought down into Egypt and sustained through that horrible famine. And when Jacob died, all the brothers were really worried. They said, uh-oh, Joseph's really going to get even with us now. The only reason he didn't have our necks was because Daddy was still alive, and he knew that Daddy would be really hurt if he got even with us. Said, now that Daddy's dead, said we've had it. So they come to Joseph, and they said, Joseph, now we need to tell you this. Our Daddy said that he wanted you to promise that you wouldn't do anything bad to us for what we did to you. And Joseph said, let me tell you something. Now I'm going to paraphrase. We have a shepherd. And the shepherd knew there was a famine coming. And he sent me down in Egypt to keep this small nation alive. Aren't you glad they had a shepherd? You see, they didn't know there was a famine coming, but our good shepherd did. But I really like Joseph's attitude. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't vengeful. But see, he realized something. We have a good shepherd. And everything that happens in my life, God has a reason for it. And God brought it to pass. And because of what Joseph did and because of the good shepherd, we now have the nation of Israel. Now keep something in mind about the good shepherd. I don't care what kind of a trial that you're going through. I don't care what kind of a heartache you're going through. I don't care what you're going to go through tomorrow. You're not going to go through it except the shepherd goes through it first. You know, we take great delight in the fact that the Lord is with you. The Lord, He will be with you. Yes, He'll be with you, but He goes before you. He's not going to lead you where it isn't safe. Isn't that comforting? Isn't that comforting? He knows all about your problems. There's no problem He doesn't know about. And when a problem comes in your life, just look to the good shepherd. And we wonder, Lord, why do I have to go this way? The way's so rocky. There's so many thorns. Listen, He's bringing us home by the right way. He knows exactly what He's doing. Now, it goes on to say this. It says that He's not only the good shepherd, but He leads us to the green pastures. Makes us lie down in green pastures. You know the trouble with sheep like me and like you? We don't recognize green pastures when we see it. We don't. You know, what the Lord calls green pastures is not what I call green pastures. Green pastures, friend, is a whole lot better job. That's what green pastures is. Green pastures is a lot better fiddle than I got now, Wayne. You see, green pastures boy, I'm glad we ain't running the show, aren't you? We don't we think green pastures is more stuff. A bigger boat, a better motorcycle, a nicer car, a bigger house. We think the green pastures is what we call the good life. But He says, I'm going to bring you to the green pastures because He knows what the green pastures are. A lot of us know Roy Davis, the preacher Roy Davis. He had a sister named, I believe her name was Lahoma. Wasn't her name Lahoma? I'll tell you, and I mean this, later in her life, and she wasn't an old woman, but later on, before she passed away, I don't believe I ever knew a more spirit-filled woman than that lady. She'd come to church, and I mean tell you, it's kind of like you could just disconnect from PSO because the church would just light up. She just radiated love and light and peace and joy. But the lady was in a wheelchair, and she had crippling arthritis so bad she was so deformed. She was in constant pain, but it was such a peace and a smile. And she gave this testimony, like, you know, boy, if that was us, you know, I mean, I don't know, I got this splinter. Why does things like this always happen to me? I don't know why I get, you know. And there she was in pain, and she got to where she couldn't even come to church. She got so bad. But when I saw her, well, she was in a wheelchair, and she wasn't an old woman, but she was so spirit-filled, and she gave the testimony. She said, you know, she said, all my life, I didn't have time to read my Bible and get close to God until God put me in the wheelchair. She said, praise God, I've got time for the Lord now. She realized this is the green pastures. I don't understand why they had to lead me this way when He was leading me this way. But praise God, He did. Yet she wouldn't trade her arthritis and her wheelchairs for all the world's got to offer because she discovered the green pastures. We don't know the green pastures, but praise God, the shepherd does. My green pastures may not be your green pastures, but He's going to bring us to the green pastures. Aren't you glad that He is? We don't all have to wind up in a wheelchair, and we won't all wind up in a wheelchair. But I'm saying whatever comes in your life, keep in mind the shepherd knows all about it. He's bringing us home by the right way. and He's going before us. You need a shepherd. Jesus overlooked Israel, said that He was sorrowful. He said they're like sheep without a shepherd. They don't know what they're doing, and they don't know where they're going. And I'll tell you what. You say, well, Jerry, I've lived my life without a shepherd, and I believe I've got things under control. Friend, I'll tell you what, you're going to need a good shepherd when you come to Old River Jordan. You're going to need a shepherd that doesn't leave you there on Old Jordan's stormy banks and say, it's been good, but this is as far as I'm going. Do you know what He's going to do? He's going to go before you, and He's going to part the waters. Isn't that comforting? You know, that's more comfort to me the older I get. Yeah, I know. It's the reason I like coconut pie can. I got dentures. I hope you live that long. But it's so comforting as the years go on to know that He's always with you. He'll never leave you. He goes right before you. Isn't that great? Do you have a good shepherd? Is the Lord your shepherd? If we could just stop and realize, I'll not want. If the Lord's my shepherd, I'll not want. In other words, you won't be in need. Now, there might be some things you think you need or things you think you want, but you'll never really be in want because He's the good shepherd and He knows where He's going. There's so much more in that psalm, and someday maybe we'll cover it. His staff comfort us. It's a comfort to us. The staff is used to get the sheep out of tight places. Did you ever get yourself in a tight place? That's the story of my life. I'm always getting myself in a jam, but the shepherd would take that crook, and he'd grab that sheep by the hind leg and pull him out of tight places. And He's always having to pull me out of tight places. Boy, I'll tell you what, I'd tell you, I'd be in all kinds of messes if it wasn't for the good shepherd that pulls me out of tight places. I'm glad I've got a shepherd. And whatever you're going through, whatever heartaches you've got. And one more point. I want to close with this. If you're living for God, it doesn't matter what trials come in your life. You know they're ordered of the Lord. Isn't that comforting? To know that, I'm going through a horrible trial in my life right now, but God knows I love Him, God knows I serve Him, and God knows I follow Him. And so this trial is ordered of the Lord, and He knows what He's doing. We all need a shepherd. But we all need to trust the shepherd. And as I said, as I started, wouldn't life be so much simpler if we could just all say, the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. And just don't worry about it. You get up tomorrow and you go to work or you go do whatever it is you need to do. I don't worry about it. I don't worry about it. We'll turn on the news and, oh man, oh my goodness, did you see what they're doing now? What difference does it make? We got a good shepherd. Oh yeah, but you see, boy, all that's going on and they're going to blow up the world and they're going to do this. Yeah, but see, they're going to a different place anyway. They don't have a shepherd. I don't have to worry about that. Here's the good news. Someday they might blow up the world. But I got another one. And by the time they get around to blowing this one up, I'm already going to be at the other one because I've got a good shepherd. The point is this, you don't have to worry about anything if you have Jesus. That's what He's trying to say. We do, but you don't have to. Why do we do that? I don't know why we do that, and I've used that illustration before. Wouldn't it be something if when your children were little, and like when Robin and Shirley was real small, and 3 or 4 years old, wouldn't it be something if every night they'd go to bed and then you'd say, what's the kids crying about? And you go in there and, they're just crying and wringing their hands. You think, what are they crying about? I don't know if we're going to have anything to eat in the morning or not. I just don't know whether we're going to. They don't have to worry about that. That's my job. They get up, sure enough, there's breakfast on the table. Whew. Boy, were we lucky. Yeah, but what about dinner? Oh, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know when we're going to have any dinner or not. Are my shoes are wearing out? I don't, that's silly. But, that's the way God looks at it. Don't worry about it, children. I'm going to lead you, and I'm going to take care of you. You may not like it, but it's going to be right. I'm never going to lead you into a trap. You might not understand where I'm leading, but it'll never be into a trap. It'll always be the right way, and it'll be for your advantage and to your profit. Praise God for the Good Shepherd. Let's stand. And let's sing, let's see, what would be a good song? That's a good one. How about Amazing Grace? Alan, would you play along with that? Amazing Grace too? Yeah, come on.